Well, welcome to West Country Wanderings and welcome to another one in my railway series. In fact, it's part 3 looking at the Portishead Railway. Now, last time I said that I would give you updates if I'd heard any news about reopening this railway. And before we complete our adventures here round to Parson Street railway station, there has been some news, particularly over the past couple of days. About 4 days ago, an article appeared on the BBC News website saying the North Somerset Council had a meeting and they'd yet again approved reopening of this line from back there where it joins Bristol Exeter line all the way through to the town of Portishead. Now, some £156 million of money has been stumped up between the West of England Regional Transport Authority, the Department of Transport and North Somerset Council. Now, that went through, which is obviously good news on itself, but unfortunately 2 days later there was another article was published that said that they're still between 30 and 50 million pounds short to complete the project. So that's all I know at the moment. In the same article though, it goes on to state that work will continue on this and it will start later this year, with opening expected to be the end of next year, i.e. the end of 2026. So reading between both those articles, it's very hard to extrapolate what the true picture has been, bearing in mind we've had many false dawns on the reopening of this line. Obviously we all can agree that it desperately needs to reopen, given how badly choked the traffic is going into Portishead, particularly on a weekday coming out to Bristol and going back in, returning at the end of the working day. So it definitely needs to happen, but exactly when, well, who knows, but I will keep you updated. Obviously this is the last one on my Portishead series here on West Country Wanderings, but if I have any more news you can actually follow it on my West Country Wanderings Facebook group, and I'll put an article on there. But obviously there's some huge gaping news, I can put it on the community page of YouTube as well. So without further ado, let's continue our adventures from here, near the site of Clifton Bridge Railway Station, which I've got some more information on, so we're going to have a look at some more things about that in a moment. And then we're going to walk over to in the direction of Ashton Gate Station, the junction there, Ashton Gate, which of course was for the Bristol Harbour Junction Railway, and then working our way around to Parson Street Station, which is where we're finishing today. So so let's tell you a little bit more about the station here at Clifton Bridge on the Portishead branch. So this is part 3 of the Portishead Railway series here, and it's probably best if you look at parts 1 and 2 first, otherwise it won't really make a whole deal of sense, but I will do a recap here. That up there of course is the Clifton Suspension Bridge, and our railway station at Clifton Bridge wasn't here, it was just the other side of this bridge. So we're now looking down at Clifton Bridge Railway Station. Well, that's the platform on the right. In actual fact, since I was last here they've done some ground clearance work. It's actually looking quite open, unless you can see quite clearly there were 2 tracks through the station here, and there was another platform just there which is buried a little bit more in the undergrowth on that side. Okay, so a quick recap of the facts about the Portishead line. It was opened by the Bristol and Portishead Pier and Railway Company. So yes, it was primarily for freight operating out of the harbour of Portishead to trade up and down the Bristol Channel, indeed across to South Wales and further afield as well. The whole thing opened in 1867, apart from the pier bit, which opened about 10 years later in 1879, I think. But the station here at Clifton Bridge also opened in 1867. Originally it was a single platform. Now the trains actually were operated by the Bristol and Exeter Railway, so they wouldn't have their own operating system, the Bristol and Portishead Pier and Railway Company. So yeah, Bristol and Exeter operated until the whole thing became absorbed by the GWR, of course, in the 1880s. And when that happened here, the site here at Clifton Bridge was extended. That's when they built another platform, extended the forecourt, and built substantial station buildings and goods facilities on the other side of there. It's really difficult to show you because you can't get access to it, but it's kind of in there. So the big station building would have been there, which had accommodation for the station master. Very extensive site. It was very well used. And just reading between it, I gave you some more facts last year about some of the wartime things. I've just learnt some other new things over the past couple of days as I was researching part 3 of the Portishead line. Now, Portishead Station itself was substantially rebuilt in 1954 to do with the power stations, plural, in Portishead there. It was actually moved, well, it's close to now to the present day Waitrose site, and that was rebuilt, as I say, in 1954. But the whole thing was closed, including the station at Portishead and the one here at Clifton Bridge, in 1964. Freight carried on here for another year longer, till 1965. But freight carried on longer for the whole thing until 1981, although it wasn't very, very frequent. The line was then mothballed by the Western region of British Railways, and it was reopened again for freight by building a partial new line to connect to this Portishead branch right into Royal Portbury Dock. So we had the line reopening in 2002. I think Royal Portbury Dock actually opened in 1977, so there's a large gap between Royal Portbury Dock opening and this freight line reopening, connecting it right through to the junction there at Parson Street junction, which we'll look at towards the end of today's video. What other secrets though did I find out about this amazing station here at Clifton Bridge? Well, now you can see the platform on the other side there through the railings. The one on this side you can't really make out at all. And sadly, the station buildings here at Clifton Bridge were destroyed around 1970 to 1972. But you still have this large retaining wall on the Bristol Temple Meads bound platform. How it actually fitted in with the buildings, I'm not too sure. It looks not dissimilar to the ones they have the remains at Mangotsfield between Bristol and Bath on the Midland Railway line there. But yes, it's a huge retaining wall. And I don't know what the shape of the building was on the other side of it. So what was the big secret and revelation about this station during World War II? Well, during World War II, a lot of Bristolians evacuated to both Pill, which we saw in part 2, and Portishead, which we saw in part 1. However, they still had jobs in Bristol city centre, so though they were living in digs and perhaps with relatives and other people that were putting them up to escape from the bombs falling from the Luftwaffe in the centre of Bristol, they needed to still get into Bristol to do their work. And one of the reasons they did that, or how they actually did that, was to sleep underneath the tunnel at Clifton Bridge Tunnel, which is a bit to the north of the station here. Yeah, amazing that. There are also some carriages in sidings, which were the good sidings, alongside the station here. Unfortunately, you can't get access to that side of the railway track from the road, but they used those carriages to sleep in overnight as well, so like temporary overnight accommodation, to get them out of this dangerous city centre at night time and out away from those bombs which were falling. Of course, as you know, there was a lot of damage during World War II here in the centre of Bristol. So yeah, another amazing fact about how this was used during World War II and protected people, or some people, from the Bristolians away from the bombs during that really scary period of time. Now, a few other oddities about the station here. So this is the Bristol-bound platform here through the railings, and the Portishead one's just the other side there. The first one is that in 1891 the station was renamed from Clifton Bridge to Rownham. I'm not sure why the reasoning for that was precisely. However, close to here was Rownham Ferry, which I did mention last time. On the other side of the railway tracks and the road towards Portishead is Rownham Hill and Rownham House as well, so it's all kind of Rownham round here. But Network Rail these days actually call it Barrow Hinton, presumably not with the word Clifton in it, to avoid confusion with Clifton on the other line. That's the line going to Severn Beach, of course. But yeah, so it came Rownham, and people would alight here to then get the ferry across to Hotwells and Clifton on the other side of the River Avon. The other reason potentially why it was changed, because if you come here as a visitor thinking you get off at Clifton Bridge to go and see Clifton Bridge, well, it's good to see Clifton Bridge from underneath from this station, but it's not so great if you want to walk across the top of it from this station, because you have to walk up a very, very steep hill, which I certainly did at the end of the last video, and get across the top to make your way to Clifton Down. And it really is quite steep, so it actually makes more sense to alight at Clifton Down, which is further away from the bridge, but have a flatter walk to get to the top of it. So perhaps that was another reason why it changed. Notwithstanding that, though, it was actually reverted back to Clifton Bridge again during 1910. I think perhaps because there was some kind of disruption with the ferry at Rownham, taking people from one side of the river to the other. Now I'm close to the footbridge here at Clifton Bridge Station, which is just there. I'm going to go over that way to make my way to Ashton Gate shortly and tell you about that. But a few more things about this. This would have been one of the original pedestrian access points into the station. Obviously it's fenced off now because the station isn't open, and when the line does eventually reopen, there are no plans to reopen it. And one of the reasons of that, I think there's very, very bad road access here. It's a very busy road, so you couldn't get a good road connection or indeed for parking or anything like that at all. But it had amazing gardens here. They were very, very well maintained, and I think they were on the other side, so it would have been the station master's side, the Portishead bound platform here. But yes, it was famed for those gardens. So just to clarify on the dates of managing the services here, the GWR took over operation in 1876 from the Bristol and Exeter. It was in 1880 that they added, I think it was in September of 1880, they added that extra platform. But it wasn't until 1887 that they took over ownership of the Bristol and Portishead Railway Company. So yeah, they actually did the investment here before they officially owned it, some 7 years. So they were very confident they were going to own it at some, what the GWR were, very, very confident company, weren't they, and wanted to dominate in this part of the world. Now on the footbridge here, which is the original footbridge at Clifton Bridge Station, that's looking back down there, back at the platforms again. After the Second World War, it actually had a very, very busy service. There was a service, 2 trains an hour, one to Ashton Gate, one going right into Bristol Temple Meads. But it all started to unravel with nationalisation, Western region, in 1948, 47, 48, around that time. And services started to run down. I think it then went to 13 trains a day. And then finally it became an unmanned halt, and the last passenger trains, I think, was September, possibly October, so I'm looking at the steps here, of 1964. Freight carried on for just one more year, but the line was mothballed, and then just said we had those occasional freight trains running up until 1981, until the reopening here in 2002. Well, I'm now going to make my way over to the site of Ashton Gate Station, which had a very, very different history to the one here at Clifton Bridge. In fact, it had more openings, reopenings and closings than the Cumberland Suspension Bridge, or Cumberland Basin Bridge, shall I say, which is fairly nearby. There are plans to reopen it, but not initially, so once trains reopen to Portishead, it won't open straight away, although the one at Pill will, which will be interesting to see exactly where that's going to be sited. But yeah, Ashton Gate won't reopen straight away, though Network Rail are going to make provision for 2 tracks there to future-proof frequency of services. So initially I think it's going to be 1 train every 30 minutes. And then maybe it could even go up to 1 train every 15 minutes if it's really, really successful. But they're going to put that in there. But say, it had a very, very interesting story. And I'll tell you about its reasonings for opening, which wasn't in the 19th century when the line opened, but in the 20th century. And I'll tell you all about that after this break. So welcome back. So I've now come on a little bit further from the site of Clifton Bridge Station. There's the Clifton Suspension Bridge again, and I'd say it's close to it, Clifton Bridge, of course. And you can see the amount of clearance work that's taken place here since I was doing the last time it was featured. It was in trees on the either side there. So lots of work this wintertime has been done by Network Rail, maintaining this line for the increasing number of freight trains, which, as I say, unfortunately, they are for steel imports going into South Wales. I know that seems a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it? But that's what's happening. So it's steel flows going that way, imported from India, I do believe. However, over here on the other side of what is known as the Ashton Gate City Gateway Bridge, it's a mouthful. Incidentally, if you're coming this way before May, this footpath is closed. This would normally join up with the River Avon that way to take you towards Clifton Bridge Station, but that's closed at the moment because of improvement work to the cycleway. but it will open, I think, towards the end of May this year, 2025. This down here is the site of Ashton Gate Station, so you can see platform along there, and you might be able to make out in the undergrowth another platform along there. So 2 platforms. But like I say, why did this station open? Because it had nothing to do with the Clifton Bridge Station, and originally when the line opened there would have been no purpose whatsoever for stationing up here, because there was nothing around here for it to serve. Well, shortly, in a couple of hours' time, there'll be something taking place over there at Ashton Gate Stadium. If you know this part of Bristol, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, Bristol City. Bristol City play at Ashton Gate Stadium. And in 1903, they were promoted to the first division, I think that's what it's called. I know nothing about football, but apparently that's a big thing. I'm not sure if that's equivalent to today's Premiership or not. Perhaps you can drop a comment in and enlighten me on that. But when they got promoted, they realised that their attendances would go up. I think the capacity of it's now around 27,000, and a rugby team play in the same stadium there. I think it's the football one that's on today. I'm not sure though. Could be wrong there, but I think it's a big game, big home game here in Bristol today. And they used this station here for the spectators to get off from various places from Western and down from the centre of Bristol and beyond to attend matches for Bristol City, which makes a lot of sense. In fact, the road coming out of Portishead, it's currently jammed up because of all the additional traffic that the match here is creating here on the Saturday afternoon. So this station opens solely for the purpose of Ashton Gate Stadium, which is amazing. There aren't many stations that are opened purely for a football ground, but this was certainly one of them here on the Portishead Branch here in Bristol. Now, when the station opened here, it was actually just called Ashton Gate Platform, because literally there was one platform, similar to what I came across the other day at Stratford-on-Avon Racecourse platform. It was extended, but before that happened though, it was actually given another name, and that was Exhibition Station, to convey passengers and visitors to the Bristol International Exhibition, which was held nearby. So it underwent changes. It closed in 1917 though, because of a First World War economy measure, and it didn't reopen until 1926. In fact, when it reopened again, it was renamed Ashton Gate, so the platform bit was dropped off the name. It became quite popular with obviously people visiting the stadium here, and also other people as this part of Bristol expanded with the suburbs here, and also towards Ashton Vale, which is what we'll be walking through as we make our way to our final destination, which is Parson Street today. But before I tell you about that, I need to tell you about some of the openings and closings of this station here, because it has an incredible history, not just for the reasons it originally opened. Now, it is difficult to work out where the pedestrian access to the station would have been, but I'm guessing it was probably here, which is the footpath which takes you round to Clifton Bridge Station. So you've got these gates here which still are in existence. It's just Barrow Gate. Allotments are on the other side. Now, the odd nature of the history of this station continues. In 1962, it was renamed again because it became Ashton Gate Halt. I think at that time it might have been manned, so status was devalued, if you like, as a cost-saving measure to protect it. But of course, as we know, 2 years later, the entire Portishead Railway Branch closed, including Ashton Gate Halt Station with it. That's not the end of this weird station's history, because in 1970, after the Portishead Branch closed for passengers, it reopened again, this time to serve the football people. I would imagine it wasn't a direct service, it was only for specials, for football specials when Bristol City were playing home games, to have excursion trains. And there were lots of lines in this area. At the moment it looks pretty simplistic with that one line running through in the platform there. But we've got another line coming in, and that's this one here, which you will be familiar if you watch my channel fairly regularly, because that is the Bristol Harbour Railway. It's coming in through, see where the pillars are there, coming through that, down that side there, and that currently is a metro busway, a guided busway, which is utilising that section of the Bristol Harbour Railway. So the two met here before they joined up with the Bristol Exeter line at what is known as Ashton Junction, or Ashton Gate Junction. So you've got the two joining, Portishead and Bristol Harbour joining, and then they continue on as one continuous line before they get to a spur. We'll talk about that spur later because that's a bit complicated unto itself. But yeah, so it reopened in 1970. I think it continued on, as far as I can ascertain, until 1977 before closing again. Again, you might think that's the end of the story, but no, it isn't. Now, if you are of a certain age, you may remember an evangelical preacher called Billy Graham from America. And he came to the West Country in 1984. In fact, I think he may have come the year before. He did various shows, if you like, preacher's shows, all across the country. And in 1984, he came to here, to Bristol, in actual fact, to the Ashton Gate Stadium, where the football players go, or the football matches, should I say. And because of the expected huge crowds coming to see Billy Graham, it's really hard to imagine loads and loads of people coming to see one person. It's almost like Elvis Presley had arrived. It was incredible at the time. Yeah, there was literally hundreds of thousands of people flocked to see Billy Graham. And because of that, they reopened the station again here at Ashton Gate in 1984, purely for people going to see Billy Graham. That's really weird, isn't it? After those concerts, performances from Billy Graham stopped, so did the trains, and no trains have served the station here, Ashton Gate, since that time. Excuse the traffic noise of this location here, but just to put it in perspective where we are and what the layout of Ashton Junction is like, because it's quite complicated to visualise exactly what it looked like when the line was running. Now, Ashton Gate Station, where we were on that overbridge, is over there, so it's under that bridge there, just beyond where you can see the signal there. This here is the guided busway, so that is the guided busway, which was once the Bristol Harbour Railway. So Bristol Harbour is in that direction, to Parson Street is back this way, so they line up here. So just see, there's the bridge here, with the Portishead line going underneath there. And yeah, so that's our guided busway coming through there. Let's go on the other side of the bridge and say, apologise for traffic noise. You've got all these intersection of busy roads heading further down in the southwest to Wells and Taunton and Weston-super-Mare here. They all converge at this point. Very busy today, of course, because of the football. But let's go on the other side now. So I've now come round on the other side of Ashton Road Overbridge, and that's the Portishead branch there. This is the guided busway here, and this is the site of the former Ashton Junction. Of course, there's no longer a junction here because there's no rails here. It's just buses these days, but hopefully this will be reopening for passengers again soon. So as we swing round and as that line continues its way to Parson Street, this here is the guided busway going on down in that direction towards Parson Street. And see, obviously this new overbridge wasn't here when the tracks were here, and it was around this point that they merged. But also there was lots of sidings for goods in this area as well. So what I'm going to do now is follow, we'll go down the steps here, these steps, and go underneath the overbridge for the buses, the guided busway. You can't walk along there, and then we're going to make our way across then round to a level crossing by Babcock International, which is I think it's a Ministry of Defence contractor. I come round to the level crossing here, which serves an industrial estate behind me. In fact, there's a yellow sign there saying new metro line will cause this crossing 45 days per day if approved, causing major disruption to all the businesses on the estate. So they're very road orientated here by this road served industrial estate. They don't want the Portishead branch to reopen, but I think it probably will. And that's the level crossing there from the other angle. I don't think there's any freight trains on it today, being a Saturday. I don't think anything has come through it, but who knows, before too long it'll be reopened. They'll be opening and closing lots, and if and when it does, well, hopefully when more than if, I'll certainly bring a video about that right here on West Country Wanderings. Leaving Ashton Gate, going to make my way across to Ashton Vale and then across through the housing towards Parson Street. Our railway line, our Portishead line, is still just there, just behind the other side of the grey railings to keep it nice and secure for those freight trains. And we're going underneath now what is called Winterstoke Road Skew Overbridge, which is the one that the buses use on the guided busway and leave Ashton Gate. And it's the amazing history of opening, closing and reopening again here on Portishead Railway Branch story. I'll see you right after this break as we make our way over to Parson Street, our final stop on the branch. Well, welcome back. That's our guided busway ski lift ramp coming down there, the Winterstoke Road Skew Bridge as a Network Rail. I don't know if that's the official term or not. I've just come through this newish footpath because it used to go that side. It's not very clearly marked on the OS map because this was done not many years ago. And I think, well, our railway is here through the grey metal fencing. That's the Portishead branch. And I think this yard here, which is now used for commercial vans, judging by that light there, it looks a bit railway-like, and I think that was a marshalling yard alongside Ashton Junction. I can't be certain about that, but if I'll try and find some more details, but I seem to think that there was an old photograph showing some yards there and goods trains there. I'm not sure what to say. I think there was a factory over there by the stadium, and it looked like it had some roundels. So did it make rubber tyres? I'm not sure. If you're from Bristol and know what the factory was next to Ashton Gate Stadium, please drop a comment below. So I think that may have served that factory there in and around this area. So that's really interesting. There is a little stream that comes down there. So our railway is the other side of our guided busway, which is difficult to cross because you're not allowed up the ramp, that's for sure. There's no buses coming at the moment, so let's go across the road. So this is our railway again. This is the Portishead branch continuing on its journey before it joins up with the Bristol Exeter main line outside the Trust Ford dealership there, so that pinpoints the location if you're local to where we are on this side of there. There used to be a foot crossing here, and it looks like it has recently been taken out, whether that's a condition of the line reopening and also because of the increased use by the freight trains using this, mainly during the week has to be said, but their number is now rapidly increasing and those rails look very, very shiny indeed. We're now in Ashton Vale, and you might be able to see a bridge ahead of me with a pedestrian underpass as well. Well, yes, that's our Portishead branch line. In fact, I need to turn right just before that bridge to make my way around to Parson Street. But there are a few interesting things to see along the way, so we'll head down there in that direction now. Yeah, so this bridge here, which have been built in the 1860s by the Bristol and Portishead Pier and Railway Company before being taken over by GWR. And the name of it is the Ashton Drive Underbridge, with its pedestrian crossing going through there. And it is, I think, wide enough for two tracks on top of it, although there's only one presently. So we're on our way to Parson Street Station, about half a mile further along here, and then it's kind of on the right. But this here is a railway feature. This indeed is part of our Portishead Railway. To the right here, cutting through this bank, is the Exeter line, heading down that way, just the other side of there, and to the left is in the direction of Portishead. You can see it ran on an embankment here between the houses at Ashton Vale. So this is like the southern half of the triangle. I'm not sure what year it was taken out of use though. Now obviously it crossed it on quite a high embankment, there's some protective fence in there, but you can see quite a substantial amount of rubble there from when the bridge was taken out of use, crossing over this minor road serving Ashton Vale and the industrial estate down there. And there's the other parapet of it on that side with the legendary railway blue bricks. So I've now come round to what is called Parson Street Junction, although it wasn't always called that when the line was originally built and opened. This was called Portishead Junction. Today the site here is also a yard for Freightliner, Bristol's Freightliner depot, though the rails don't look like through the fence here. They've seen that much use over recent months, you can just see them through there. But you've got a train speeding down towards Plymouth or Penzance just coming through now. And that is the Bristol Exeter mainline. So it's here, this is our final destination, where the Portishead line meets the Bristol and Exeter mainline. Well, in actual fact, it's just up there. And that's where we're heading to next, in the direction of Parson Street Station, because that station is slightly to the north of Parson Street Junction. In actual fact, our Portishead branch itself disappears underneath the road bridge here, which is currently being held on a red light. So we can see what we can see from that overbridge, looking back in the direction of Ashton Gate and Clifton Bridge Station, so though the pavement is quite narrow. See how we get on. So that's looking down at the Freightliner depot, which is encased by the green fencing now, protected by CCTV. So we're just looking at through the brambles at the moment, and the two lines further over are the lines to Exeter and up to Bristol Temple Meads. So this is Coal Pit Lane overbridge with the branch, Portishead branch, underneath there, and Parson Street Junction just down there, where it finally meets the main line. And the end of our journey, since we've been doing this here on West Country Wandering since autumn last year, and I started off in the town of Portishead in North Somerset. Well, I just had a look on the other side of the bridge. There's actually two tracks of the Portishead branch on the other side. I think that must be the only section where there is two tracks, because there's only one line, one track coming off at Parson Street Junction off the main line going under it, and it must widen to two tracks underneath Coal Pit Lane Bridge. But it's really difficult to get in a good shot of it because the bridge is so narrow, there's no pavement on the other side of it. So sorry for the shaky footage, but just confirms there's two tracks there. And hopefully it'll be two tracks again all the way through to the site of Ashton Gate Station, which will give the line extra capacity to Portishead when it opens. Now I'm walking to the site now of Parson Street Station, which is our final stop on the service from Portishead today, and I'll tell you some more about Parson Street when we get there, because it's quite a bit of history to that station as well. So hope you can join me over there in a bit. Now we've got a good view down at Parson Street Junction, what was Portishead Junction. That's the two tracks. I said that I thought it widened at the point underneath the bridge itself, Coal Pit Lane. You can just make out the bridge there that I was on, and there's the two tracks. So it widens just after the junction into two tracks, making its way down to Portishead. There's the two main lines, and there's the turnout for the Freightliner depot there, and you can just make out the lorries there and where the flatbed store up to load and unload the lorries. At Parson Street Station, and this is the platform here for trains to Weston-super-Mare, and there's one due in 2 minutes coming in on platform 2. As you'll notice here at Parson Street, it's actually made up of two island platforms, but only two platform places are used. So platform 2 is for the Bristol bound trains, indeed the one going on there goes on to Avonmouth, and the one on the right hand side is our line into Portishead. But that's not used for trains, of course, but it hopefully will be again. It's all ready to go, it's all even got freshly painted up. But this side here, there is no line on this side. and that's this face here. There's no track on that side. The line here was originally just double track, and it was widened to 4 tracks in 1933. But there's a lot more history to tell you about. Let's go down on the platform and tell you some more after this train has arrived and disappeared. Well, as you can see, it's pretty busy today. It is a busier station than it normally is, but of course all those people are getting off, most of them I would think, for the football match, which is about to start over at Ashton Gate Station. And as you can see there, the sign says the stop for Ashton Gate. But unfortunately it's an 18 minutes walk. It would be a lot less if Ashton Gate Station was still open. So this is Parson Street Station. It was actually opened in 1927. What's that, about 50 years, in fact, after our branch line, Portishead branch line, which is to say is over on that side there, that facing platform, which isn't currently used for passenger trains, but fingers crossed it will be again soon, as they're making their way onto the town of Parsons Street Junction. Of course, that was called Portishead Junction when the line was opened. So this wasn't here when the line was coming out of Temple Meads and then turning right into Portishead or off the main Bristol Exeter line. It was opened in 1927 as a basic station, in fact, first of all, and it serves Bishopston, Ashton Vale, which I walked through to get to here, and currently Ashton Gate and of course the football ground, because Ashton Gate Station is no longer in use, maybe again one day, but I say there are no plans to open it when the Portishead line opens, at least initially anyway. Now this was widened here for 4 tracking, so we got the 4 tracks, would have been 1, 2, 3 and the 4th track over here, which doesn't currently exist. When it was 4 tracked here at Parson Street, that is when it was substantially rebuilt with, it was kind of had shelters to it. And I think there was like a waiting room here. And the main access for Parson Street is off the road. Unfortunately, I don't know the name of the road, but you'll see a road overbridge there. And it's served by 2 staircases coming on down to the 2 island platforms here. So yes, substantially widened. Now the amazing thing about Parson Street Station is the spectacular growth in passenger numbers. Back in 2002, just 4,000 people used this during an entire year. And last year, the passenger figures for this station for the entire year were, wait for this, 170,000 passengers. That may not sound a lot in comparison to places like Birmingham New Street and Bristol Temple Meads, but as in terms of a percentage growth over just over a 20-year period, that's quite extraordinary. One of the reasons for that is the frequency of trains that serve here at Parson Street has increased. Another reason is that you now have CCTV and better lighting, because it was a bit of a vulnerable site here in suburban Bristol. and now it's been made safer, and I think it's regularly patrolled. In terms of facilities, well, there's not a great deal. There's a couple of shelters here. There's one here, which I've just got my bag in at the moment. There's literally no one else here in between trains at the moment. The next train is in about 45 minutes to take me back to Temple Meads. And there's a couple of shelters on that side. In fact, they've actually got a shelter facing that way, which is on the Portishead side, which is interesting. But as I say, that's not currently in use. In fact, you'll see that there's no current indicator telling you there's any trains, but that can easily be put in when the line reopens. So it's served basically by hourly trains. So the next train's 15:34 heading south towards Weston-super-Mare. Sometimes there are through trains indeed to Plymouth from here, which is great. And in the opposite direction, so they are hourly to back to Bristol, and often they'll head up right on into Severn Beach as well. So not a bad service. Potentially it could increase to half hourly when the Portishead line is opened, and again I think the passenger numbers of them will go up into the quarter of the millions and beyond. But yeah, brilliant station here, great suburban station in the heart of suburban Bristol, and it serves quite a wide area as well. Now originally there wasn't an intermediate station between the Portishead and Ashton Gate down there when that opened for the football, but there is another station north of here. We're 2 miles south of Bristol Temple Meads here, and in that direction there, at about a mile down the tracks, you have Bedminster Station, which is the first station you come to after you make your way south out of Bristol Temple Meads. Now the other thing at the other end of the station, so we're at the opposite end looking towards Bristol Temple Meads at the moment from the Portishead Branch line. This is the Portishead line here. Is that down here once were West End sidings, and they were over here, so they were kind of, I don't want to go over the yellow line, but you might see those tower blocks underneath the bridge. Off to the right of that were extensive sidings, and I remember them, well, not in use, but I can't remember seeing some trucks in there in the late 70s, early 80s. In fact, they actually closed during the mid-70s because they were used extensively for huge carrier sidings. This is in the days, of course, when you had diesel locomotives, and obviously prior to that, steam locomotives. So they were adjacent to the station here, and they closed when St Philip's Marsh depot opened, which is a little bit further kind of to the north and to the right before you get to Temple Meads, and that opened with the new, what was then the new HST trains, which kind of arrived around 1976, 1977 time. So when that opened, they no longer needed the extensive carriage sidings, which were mainly served the Paddington trains out of Temple Meads, because the HSTs were already, of course, pre-formed units, and they had their own dedicated maintenance depot here in Bristol. So yes, just another little facet there. What I forgot to mention was when it originally owned here, it was called Parson Street Halt, and that changed to fully become Parson Street because it expanded and it was building with the buildings when it was 4 tracks. Well, I think we've come a long way in our ventures here on the Portishead Branch. So I started it back in the autumn there, looking in the undergrowth, scrabbling in the undergrowth, to the side of Sainsbury's supermarket, where they'd just taken up the tracks and are taking it to the Avon Valley Railway, the heritage line there in Bitton in South Gloucestershire. And I do hope to see, well, not there, but a little bit further up the track, a new station built there. Hopefully very, very soon, perhaps as early as next year, a brand new station. That'll be really exciting to see the branch line here, and trains, passenger trains coming along here once more to the North Somerset town of Portishead. By goodness me, doesn't it ever need it, that's for sure, because of the traffic volumes on the roads around here. We've had quite an adventure, haven't we? We looked at the station at Hall Green, Hamgreen Halt, shall I say, looking at that hospital there. That was really, really interesting. And the station at Pill, when we're trying to work out, the gentleman helped me with looking at the platform there, indeed, how you got onto the platforms there at Pill. But yeah, come a long way in our journey from Portishead to here. It's in effect, it's only about 8 miles. It's got 2 miles further on there to city centre, Bristol Temple Meads, which is where I'll be catching a train soon. So I hope you enjoyed parts 1, 2 and 3. I'll link to parts 1 and 2 at the end of this video in case you haven't seen those, and this was the first one you come to. If there's any more updates, then I suggest you join my Facebook group, West Country Wanderings, because I'll put it all on there. Failing that, I'll put it on my community page, but as soon as it opens, you can bet I'll be really excited to catch a train from Temple Meads to Portishead, hopefully on one of the very first ones. into that town they go. That'll really be brilliant. We have some new openings to tell you about there before I go. Charfield Station in South Gloucestershire, they're reopening that soon. That's actually started to work next month in February 2025, so that's really exciting, and I will cover that of course when that opens. I'm not sure the timelines on that, probably a couple of years to build that, maybe a little bit longer, not sure. So that'll be happening. There's also Edginswell, which is in South Devon, which is near Torbay Hospital, so that could well be opening. There is the Newquay scheme, the Metro, the Cornwall Metro, that is now put in the new platform, well, replacement platform from the previous one, so that's happening. So there's lots of things happening. Oh, and Wellington as well in Somerset, so hopefully that'll be opening not too distant future. So all those things, and I will certainly be covering those as they open, and hopefully the rest of the Bristol Metro project as well as Portishead, but the other couple of stations at Hembury and North Filton, hopefully that'll be opening again before too long as well. So lots of developments potentially happening on the railways in the West Country, including the branch here. All exciting stuff, and I hope to bring that to you again on the channel, as well as many other things, both in my railway series, my canal series, and also my walks. I do Cotswold walks, walking in the southwest, and lots of other things about history as well. So hope you enjoyed it. Until next time on the channel, take care of yourselves, look after yourselves, and I hope to see you on the channel again very, very soon. All the best for now. Cheers. Bye bye.